Albuquerque, New Mexico. I was heading to a friend's house off campus that evening, just after sundown. She texted me directions, but something must have been off because the further I drove, the worse the streets started to look around me. The shops turned to boarded up windows, the graffiti got thicker, and every person on the sidewalk seemed to be watching my car instead of minding their own business. And that's when I realized that I'd wandered into the war zone off Central. I just needed a place to turn around. I spotted this old apartment complex with flickering floodlights and pulled in, easing through the lot while a few kids darted between cars chasing a deflated soccer ball. I was rolling pretty slow, trying not to hit anybody, when this guy came out of nowhere like he'd almost been waiting for me. He was a walking stereotype. Shaved head, locks, Ben Davis shirt, long dicky shorts, white tube socks pulled high, threw up a hand and shouted, "Yo, stop." I hit the brakes, heart pounding already. I had my phone in one hand ready to fake call. My other hand was resting near the gear shifter just in case I needed to bolt. But I couldn't just floor it, not with those kids running around in the parking lot. Jogging up to my window, grinning wide but not friendly. "Yo, roll down the window, man." Against all of my good judgment, I cracked it. "What's up?" I asked. "You got any coke?" he asked me. I blinked. Only if it's Mexican coke," I said, trying to sound casual, praying he'd laugh and just move on. He did, in a sudden outburst that showed his gold teeth. "Shit, man, can I get a lift down to the store for some smokes? You mind?" Every instinct inside of me told me no, but something about his tone, half joking, half daring me, made me hesitate. Maybe I didn't want to offend him, maybe I was scared. Either way, I said, "Yeah, sure, hop in." He slid into the passenger seat, noticed the music right away. "Hey, that's Tribe Called Quest." "Yeah," I said back. He slapped the dashboard. "Man, I've seen them 3 times back in Cali. Q-Tip, that dude's a legend." Did help a little bit. Talking about music humanized him, and for a minute I started to think maybe I was overreacting. The gas station was only a few blocks away, but the drive felt like it took forever. He kept shifting around in the seat beside me, scratching his leg, glancing in the side mirror like he was expecting somebody to be following us. He told me his name was Danny, but didn't offer a last name. Said he used to run with some boys out in LA, then moved here just to chill, whatever that meant. We pulled up to the Circle K and he told me to keep the engine running. "I'll be quick, man, don't trip." He went inside and I sat there sweating bullets, watching him through the glass doors. He was talking to the clerk and pointing at something, then pacing near the back. After a few minutes, he disappeared behind an aisle, and I began counting the seconds, debating on whether or not to leave. Then suddenly the doors slam open, and he comes sprinting out with 2 paper bags clutched directly to his chest. "Go! Go, man, go! They're calling the cops!" He yelled at me, diving into the passenger seat. I didn't really think about it, I just hit the gas. My heart felt like it was going to explode. I could hear sirens somewhere off in the distance, rapidly closing in. He was laughing like it was the funniest thing in the world. "Yo, you should have seen your face." I shot him a look, white-knuckled on the steering wheel. "Did you just rob that place?" "Nah, man," he said between laughs. "I'm just messing with you. Relax, damn." I didn't know really whether to believe him, but we were already pulling back into the apartment lot. He told me to stop near that same corner that I picked him up at. "Hey," he said, suddenly calm, almost thankful. "I don't blame you for being nervous around me. You're actually a pretty good dude for stopping." He dug into one of the bags and handed me a pack of Funyuns and a glass bottle of Mexican Coke, then reached into his pocket, pulled out a small dime bag, and tossed it into my lap. "Oh, to thank you," he said, opening up the door. He gives me a nod, then walks off toward the shadows between 2 buildings. I sat there for a long moment, engine still idling, staring at that dime bag in my lap in complete disbelief. To this day, I'll fully admit that was some of the best weed I've ever smoked. Not the worst wrong turn I've taken either, but it was one that taught me just how thin that line is between danger and chance. You really never know who's walking up to your window until it's too late. My name is Rich, and my fiance's name is Joanne, who, for this story, I'm gonna call Joe, who also comes with me on nearly every long-distance trip that I take. We run a towing and automotive transport company out of New York State, specializing in exotic and luxury vehicles. It's not uncommon for us to haul a six-figure car across the country, but on this particular trip, it's, well, one I'm never gonna forget. It was early May 2025. We had just delivered a Lamborghini down to northern Florida. That drive south was pretty smooth. No dot inspections, no traffic, nothing but open road. I remember thinking to myself, this might actually be a stress-free run for once. That changed, however, the moment that we tried to unload. There were lots of these little wrong turns that we'd made on this trip, and this was just the first one. My truck, brand new, top of the line, computer-controlled everything, suddenly threw an electrical fault mid-unload. The PTO light went out, the hydraulics cut off, and the whole system just died. Luckily, I'd gotten the Lambo off safely, but the truck was half dead. The builder back in South Carolina told me, "Bring it here and we'll get you first thing tomorrow morning." So we fueled up, grabbed a couple of energy drinks, and hit the road north. It was 9:45 p.m. when we pulled into a gas station just outside of Jacksonville. While I filled the tank, Joe ran inside for some snacks and drinks, which is an absolute must. That's when I noticed it, this black Chevy Impala, older model, maybe 2010 with tinted windows, parked across the lot, engine idling. When I fired up my truck, their lights turned on too. Now in the moment, I brushed it off because who wouldn't? Coincidence, I figured. We get on I-95 and the night was dark. That kind of dark that eats headlights. Air was heavy, thick with the feeling of a storm brewing. Then, just as Joe mentioned rain, it comes down in sheets. She glanced back and said, "Hey, that car's really riding your bumper." I checked the mirrors. I couldn't see much. Then, whoever it was quickly swings over to the left lane and hit me with their high beams, just blinding me completely. What a dickhead, I thought to myself. It was annoying, sure, but I've seen plenty of impatient and incompetent drivers. I ignored it and kept on rolling. Hours pass and that storm never really lets up. By the time we hit Columbia, South Carolina, I'd forgotten all about that tailgater. That is, until that same black Impala comes flying up beside us. It swerves over into my lane, cutting me off so hard that I had to slam the brakes. Joe jolted away, cursing, and the Impala then slows down to about 55, then 40, then 35. It was deliberate, taunting almost. I dropped a gear and floored the accelerator, passed it, and finally got a good look. The tint was so dark that I couldn't see a single thing inside, or a person, and that's when it clicked. "That's the same car from Jacksonville," I said. Joe nodded. She had noticed it too. She booked us a hotel near the dealership, 15 minutes away, just off I-85, ETA of around 3:30 a.m. That last hour would really feel endless, and that Impala stayed behind us the whole time. When we pulled into the hotel parking lot at around 4 a.m., the rain was still hammering down. The lot was packed, but we squeezed into a space. Across the road, half hidden in the rain, sat that same Impala, idling on the shoulder. Joe looked over at me nervously. "Okay, do you think he's after the trailer or what he thinks is inside it?" I shrugged, though deep down my gut was screaming, yes. Before stepping out, I reached into my bag, unzipped the hidden compartment, and pulled out my Glock 19, sliding it in my waistband. Joe nodded silently. "On 3, I said. We run for the door. We bolted through the downpour, slamming through the hotel's sliding doors, and were hit with a stench of mildew, cigarette smoke, and something worse, an undertone of urine. A front desk clerk waddles out from the back room. He smiled, but something about it was just off. "Checking in?" he asked, and his tone was a little too casual, too familiar, too friendly. I handed over my driver's license as well as my credit card. He pulled the reservation, making a key card and smiling still. "First floor for you two, right around the corner." He winked at Joe as he slid the key across the counter. "Breakfast is at 6:30. "Yeah, thanks," I muttered, hurrying it off. Joe was squeezing my arms and looked up at me. "What a creep." I nodded back in agreement. When we reached the room, the smell wasn't much better. The place was old, damp and stained, and Joe sat on top of the bed, still fully clothed. "I can't wait to leave here," she said quietly. as I walked out of the room's prison-style bathroom. "It's just one night, thankfully," I told her. We changed, closed the curtains, and tried to get some sleep. An hour later, I was half asleep when I heard the faint rattle of a doorknob. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but it kept going and got louder and more violent. It was the adjoining room door. Somebody was trying to get in. The realization shot me awake quicker than anything really has before. I reached over for my Glock and aimed it at the door. My main concern was Joe. I kept my focus, training my pistol at the door. Joe was still sleeping soundly beside me. For 30 minutes straight, that handle shook, and then it was just followed by silence. I exhaled slowly, and that's when something moved outside the window. I caught it in my peripheral vision. I froze. A tall, thin shadow stood on the other side of the curtain. Then, 3 slow, deliberate taps. I yanked the curtains open, and there he was, a man in black with a ski mask on, standing inches from the glass. I raised the gun at him. "Back off, or I'll shoot." He didn't move, just raised both hands, then pulled the mask up, just enough to reveal his mouth. He smiled at me. It was wide, too wide and full of teeth, and he slammed his fist on the glass, and Joe screamed, jolting awake. "There's somebody out there," I shouted at her. She ran over, but when she looked out, no one, just the rain. Then she saw a smudged handprint on the outside of the window, and that was enough. We packed everything and stormed down to the front desk. "Yeah, we're checking out," I said, throwing the key across the counter. The clerk didn't even blink. "Aw, already? Why not stay a little longer?" His grin spread was unnaturally wide. "Maybe, love on each other a little bit." "Yeah, no," I said, and we continued to walk out. I unholstered my gun and we sprinted to the truck, Joe locking herself in. As I loaded up our last bag, I noticed the trailer's stepladder was down. Somebody had tried to pry the side door open and parked just beyond us. And wouldn't you know it, the Impala. "Rich," Joe yelled at me, "let's go." As I climbed into the driver's seat, my headlights illuminated the figure standing beside the car. Same man, same mask. Staying in this hotel was our second wrong turn. "Drive," Joe said flatly. "Say less." I hit the gas, tearing out of that lot and back onto the highway. The clock on the dashboard read 6 a.m., and neither of us really spoke or said a word for miles. Finally, Joe whispered after a while, "The sunrise is beautiful." I glanced over, her hand in mine, and felt my shoulders drop. "Yeah," I said quietly, "it is." We made it to the dealership half an hour later or so, parked and slept in the truck until the shop opened. Now, I've seen a lot on the road. I've been followed, almost hit by wrong-way drivers, and seen unexplainable things in the mountains, but nothing has ever rattled me like that before. Not like that night. The thought of losing my soulmate to someone dangerous or being taken away from her, I can't handle that. One of the main reasons I carry is to protect us, our equipment, and the valuable cargo that we haul. When the sky turns dark and the stars and the moon are hidden by cloud and rains, if I glance out a window, I can still see that smile through the glass. I didn't want to be in New Jersey. That's the first thing that I'm going to tell you, because I wasn't supposed to be on this trip at all. I'm actually not sales. I don't pitch. I don't stand in front of boardrooms. I sit in a chair and pull numbers. That's what I do. Quiet work, Excel work. If I talk to anybody, it's through an email. But late on the night before, I got a call from my boss saying, "Listen, there's a small change of plans. They want to see you supporting financials. Legal wants you in the room." I told him, I wasn't scheduled for this. I don't even have a suit." "Buy one when you land," he said. "Look, it'll be easy. Fly out, be there for the meeting, back up the model if they push it. You're not even presenting, you're just kind of there." "Why can't they send the deck?" "They have the deck. They need a human too." And so that was what it was. I took a last-minute flight out and landed in Newark and followed the signs for car rentals because all the team cars were already in use, and nobody had the bandwidth to loop back and just pick me up. I grabbed the cheapest one available, this sedan that they had. It was a gray compact smelling like somebody had sprayed cologne over cigarettes. I didn't care. I just wanted to get to the hotel, send my wife a text that I was in fact alive, and run numbers in peace until the following morning. The meeting was at 9 the next day. I had the financial data on a thumb drive in my bag. That little drive was the reason I was there after all. If their guy in a room asked about cash flow projections or margins, I'd be able to say, "Here's the 5-year picture," and not sound like a complete idiot. That's all I had to do. Simple. Extra paycheck, just deliver it. No sightseeing, no dinner, no might as well check out the city. None of that. Hell, it's New Jersey. I was there to get in and get out. Just hotel, shower, cheap meal, sleep, meeting, done. But the thing about being somewhere you've never driven before, especially when it's already dark and the GPS on your phone begins to act a little glitchy, it doesn't matter how simple your plan is because now you're in it. I wasn't even 20 minutes out of the airport before I knew I was in trouble. I'd missed my turn leaving Newark, and that's all it took. One wrong exit and everything started to blur together. My phone map spun and lagged, the blue dots sliding around like it didn't know where I was. At one point, it said I was in the middle of the ocean. The signs flew past me, couldn't read any of them, and the traffic was brutal. Horns, brake lights, semis cutting each other off. Every time I thought I'd corrected the course, another lane would end, another detour would come up, another split would appear without warning. This road system was impossible. After 15 minutes or so of fighting it, I realized that I'd lost track of everything that felt familiar. The street lights were spreading out, the traffic was drained, and the buildings grew older and closer together. The GPS finally recalculated, but the directional voice was silent, so I found myself funneled down this narrow ramp onto an unlit neighborhood. It's fine, cities are confusing. I'd turn around, make it right. But the first thing that I noticed was the people, dozens of them, all walking or standing around on corners. Even though it was really late at night, some looked half awake, wandering around. Others just watched the cars go by. My stomach was knotting up. The storefronts had bars in the windows. Half the streetlights were dead. I didn't even know the name of the town, but later on, I'd learned that it was Camden. I slowed down at a stop sign, checking the map again. That's when 2 men on the sidewalk turned their heads at the same time. Just a glance, but they kept watching. One raised his hand like he was pointing something out. I rolled forward, trying to not make eye contact. Every block that I drove, more people would appear. A man leaning against a parked car, a group by a corner store, someone crossing the street in slow motion like they wanted to force me to stop. I kept moving though, refusing to let the car idle. I felt like I was a tank in a full of sharks. Rerouting, my phone said again. I felt like throwing it out the window. It was useless. I ended up turning down the side street that looked a little wider, a place I could hopefully flip a U-turn in. The pavement changed from blacktop to cracked concrete, houses pressed in closely, windows dark. I passed one with police tape fluttering on the porch railing. I said out loud to nobody but myself that I shouldn't be here. Then I saw this light, a single red light stop ahead, the only one in view. I needed a break to check the map, so I pulled up to it and stopped. And that was a mistake. At first, I really thought the area around me was deserted. The cross street looked empty, and then from my left, I saw a group standing by the corner, 3, maybe 4 men total. They hadn't looked my way until the car stopped, and now they were all just staring directly at me. I tried to look calm, one hand on the wheel, eyes forward, and the light stayed red. Then the men started walking, not rushing, just kind of drifting closer, splitting up as they got toward me. One on my side, one on the passenger door, and the other toward the hood. I reached over and hit the lock button. The click sounded like a gunshot inside the car. And that was enough to set them all off. One of them grinned and called out to me. "Oh, you scared, man? We're just saying hi." The others laughed. I kept my hands visible on the wheel. I'm just lost," I said through the glass. "Trying to get back to the highway. That's all." The one in the front stepped closer until he was right at my bumper. Highway's that way," he said, pointing behind me. "Why'd you lock your door then?" The lights still didn't change, and I could hear my heart over the idling engine. Another one came up to the passenger window and peered in. "Yo, he's got a rental," he said. "Look, airport tag. This fool is an out-of-towner." That made the others laugh even harder. "Ooh, a tourist," one said. "You picked the wrong street, dummy." They circled the car tighter. My phone screen went black from the timeout, and for a brief moment, I couldn't even recall my unlocking pattern. "Hey," one said, tapping the glass with a ringed finger. "Roll it down, buddy." I shook my head. "Roll it down." I cracked it maybe an inch, my voice trembling. I just need directions." He smiled at that, big white teeth, dark eyes flat as oil. "Nah, you're already where you need to be." I noticed his hand, he was gripping something, a small length of pipe wrapped up in tape. Behind me, somebody slapped the trunk. "Yo, pop the trunk, let's see what he's got in here." I jumped in my seat. The one near the door laughed at me. "You shaking, man? You good? Ain't nobody gonna hurt you if you chill." I just want to leave," I said. "So go." "The light's red." They all cracked up at that. "The light's red," one repeated, mocking me. "Man, you better pray that thing changes before I get bored. People like you get killed out here." "The light's red, damn, homie." The one at the passenger side bent to see in the car, looking for my hands. "You on the phone?" "No." "You sure? Because I don't like surprises." He pounded the glass twice, hard enough to make it rattle. The one at the front spat on the hood. The sound of their voices were rising up now, layered, cruel, overlapping, like they couldn't really decide what they want to do. "Pop it open, step out of the car. Where you headed, boss? Bet he got cash on him." The light still was red, and I stared at it until my eyes started to water. I didn't know what it was, but I was just frozen, in fear or whatever. Fear of having to run somebody over, fear of damaging the rental, fear of overreacting. One of them slammed against the windshield with his palm, and I flinched back. Another hit the side mirror, flipping it inward. Somebody behind kicked a bumper. "Yo, you hearing me?" the first one shouted. "Look at me when I talk to you." I'm looking," I said. "I hear you." "Then quit being a bitch. Open the door." I shook my head at him. "Fine," he said, bringing up the pipe. "We'll open it for you then." Out of the corner of my eye, blue and red lights then washed across the buildings. A short burst of siren followed, just a chirp, and the men stopped in mid-motion. I felt like I'd been saved, like God reached himself down and set that patrol car right there for me. A cruiser sat halfway up the next block, angled toward us. Its spotlight snapped on, lighting up the whole intersection. The cop's voice then came through this loudspeaker.
"Gentlemen, hands visible. Let's not make this complicated. Move it along."
One by one, the men backed up, pretending it was nothing. We were just talking," one said, palms up, and within seconds they were drifting back off into the dark. The officer's voice came once more.
"Driver, proceed forward slowly."
My foot barely even found the gas. I rolled through the intersection, hands trembling so hard I could barely even steer my car. The light turned green behind me, finally, and it actually made me laugh because even the cop had told me to roll through the red light. My lack of survival skills were glaring for all to see. I didn't look back. I drove until the glow of the highway signs came up again, white and sterile up against the night sky. My hands were killing me from gripping that wheel so hard. I missed 2 chances to merge because I couldn't trust myself to look anywhere but straight ahead. When I finally reached the on-ramp, I pulled over on the shoulder and just sat there with the hazards blinking. The silence inside the car was so complete that I could hear my organs working. I checked my mirrors, empty. The blue and red flash from that cruiser was long gone now. I didn't even know if the other officer had followed them or just waited until I was moving. I didn't care. I just knew I'd been seconds away from something irreversible. The hotel was another 30 minutes down the interstate. I kept the GPS muted and followed the signs by instinct, white-knuckling it the whole way. When I finally parked, I just sat there for 10 minutes before I finally got the courage to get out. My reflection in the window didn't even look like me. Eyes wide, mouth dry, collar crooked. Once inside, the desk clerk just smiled at me, like nothing in the world was even wrong. "Hey sir, late night?" she asked me. All I could say was, "Yeah, you could say that." The meeting the following morning went fine. I answered what I had to, nodded when spoken to, and smiled when it was finally over. Nobody knew that I'd almost been dragged out of a car that night before. Nobody knew I spent the whole presentation hearing the slap of hands on glass and the sound of a pipe tapping up against my window. I flew home that evening. I looked down from the plane windows as the lights of New Jersey disappeared over cloud cover. And in that moment, I told myself one thing. Absolutely no more surprise visits to New Jersey, and absolutely no getting lost in Camden again.